Welcome to the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast, where we take a metabolic approach to help guide you on preventing, prevailing, and striving over cancer.
We are live on the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jeff Lopes, my incredible co-host, Keith Bishop. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. And how about you?
I'm doing amazing.
Good. So it's actually been a couple of weeks for us. So I've been busy. I had a workcation and went up to the mountains. And what more can a guy ask for? I got to drive an excavator and skid steer and pier driver and concrete buster and all kinds of stuff working on a friend's cabin. So it was a great week up in the mountains and fishing. Even we got to do some trout fishing.
It's like a man's weekend.
Yeah, exactly. There was five of us guys, and one of the neighbors. There's 6 of us out there, and so I take that back. There's 4 of us, 5 of us total.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was nice, but it's nice to getting back into the routine.
Yeah. But it's nice just to get out in the open air and just breathe in the air and that calmness and that de-stressor and eliminating some electronics. I mean, that is so important every once in a while just to get away from this busy schedule that we live and just enjoy life. And even though you're working, you don't probably even feel like you're working until the end of the night when your body's tired, but it's
tired.
Yeah.
Sometimes sore, we were lifting some.
Of course.
As a matter of fact, this neighbor even had a lumber mill.
Oh, wow.
And so he was, cutting and we were helping him with cutting the trees, literally the big old, pine trees and fir trees and cutting those into the 8x8 beams and stuff like that. So, so it was quite an experience and a great learning experience. And I thrive on that. So, whether it be health type things or even, I've learned a lot of great skills.
I love that. I mean, we could talk about this all day, but I mean, anything when it comes to building, whether it's renos, whether it's working on cars, like anything like that, you get your hands dirty. I'm a huge proponent for it and learning and be able to learn how to do it on your own. I always have that mindset. If I'm going to pay somebody to do it, why can't I learn how to do it on my own? Because reality is they've learned, let me be able to put my mind to it. And especially nowadays with YouTube, and there's so many ways to learn or work with somebody that has experience. So I love being able to use my hands and learn and do things. So that's awesome. So this week's podcast is an actually important one. It's something that you talk about. You say you have a blog post. I'm going to put all the notes of that blog post at the end of this podcast. And it's a supplement. When I got diagnosed, it was one that I read into and I literally started right away. And there's 2 names for it. When I first heard it, I was drawn to the name. It was called turkey tail, but a lot of the medical world call it Coriolis versicolor.
Yes.
You got that right. Okay. And this supplement, and it got the name turkey tail because I guess the colors and the shape, it kind of looks like a turkey tail. So we got that name. And it's heavily used for probably centuries in the Asian countries. And there is so many studies. Like I actually yesterday for the first time went and I started just reading study. And it's like, these are massive studies, like 8,000 people, 4,500. It's massive studies.
That's right.
And the benefits every single time there is shown, whether people are using in conjunction with a traditional medical treatment like chemo, or they're doing it as a preventative, or they're doing it as one of their supplements to help in their fighting their cancer journey. It's just like benefit after benefit after benefit. So let's dive right into it. So turkey tail, it's derived from a mushroom. There's so many benefits, and let's start off with the aspects of antioxidants, and then I'll go into each one. But let's start with antioxidants, and let's talk about that, and we'll break down each section of the benefits of this.
Yeah. So like most plants, typically the darker the color, or in this case, fungus, the darker the colors, the more antioxidants. And antioxidants repair our body. And repair the body, but we're actually getting into the metabolic theory of cancer, is actually the mitochondria is going weird. Well, these antioxidants go in and help repair the mitochondria, and the cells, not just organs, not just cells, but into the little energy manufacturing, centers, in the cells. And there's actually, it can literally be hundreds, maybe thousand, mitochondria in some of these organs, and in each cell rather. So they help those to be normal and not turn into cancer, for example, and reduce the risk of cancer. So that's the antioxidant type thing. And that means that it's actually donated electrons, to our body and to repair those type things. So along that line, so most of us know about radiation, increasing the risk of cancer. And so X-rays, CTs, but even people that fly, in jets and planes, high altitude, now they don't have as much atmosphere protecting them. And so there's higher exposure to radiation, the good sun, but the sun does have some radiation type effects. And so these antioxidants donate electrons to the cells to repair them. So there's one of the active ingredients is also called a beta glucan, but there's studies that they've given these mushroom extracts and mushrooms to animals and exposed them to lethal doses of radiation, like a nuclear bomb type of a deal. And then the little rats and mice that got these mushrooms and extracts, they had a tendency to live where all of the others died.
Yeah, that's incredible. I saw that. I saw a study like that. So that's incredible.
Yeah. So there's several studies along that line. So, and it doesn't, appear to inhibit, if anything, and enhances the effectiveness. And we'll go into that too in a little bit too about why that seems to work. Anyway, so yes, antioxidant, it repairs cells in the body, repairs the mitochondria, which is the metabolic approach to cancer. And so it's, and that's what's nice also about the Versa color. That color is a little bit special. So darker, like chaga is another one that we've talked about and mentioned briefly. And I can't remember if we did a post on it or not, but a blog on it or
we did. I think podcast. We did a podcast.
We did. Yeah. And so, but that dark color, and it has a lot of antioxidants. And when you brew it as a tea,
they're a great they're a great combination to take together too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. And so I think variety is important. I don't want to just rely on one thing, for anything. I always want to have a backup and some variety. I'm not going to eat just walnuts every day. I'm going to mix that in some nuts and seeds and have variety. So I don't want to do just one thing. So same thing with turkey tail. It's great, but I just wouldn't want to rely on it alone. And so there's other mushrooms are great options.
We could talk about that all day. I mean, we announce that on a regular basis on our podcast that don't get stuck on social media posts, because I think people could go down that rabbit hole where they're like, you walk 20 minutes a day, you got a 60% less chance of getting cancer. No, it's not walking just every day. It's the supplements, it's the lifestyle, it's the environment, it's how you detox your house, the supplements you take, the way you eat. Like there's so many factors. But if you could plug in slowly one thing at a time, you are over time reducing the opportunity for these cells to go rogue. And then at the same time, if you are in the situation you're battling cancer, if this is going to give you an opportunity to fight it and beat it, why would you not take it? So that's what you have to look at it, right?
Exactly. So, there are some human studies, typically from Asia, showing that people that take these, there's a particular breast cancer study that I read, people that, were taking the teas, the turkey tail, had a 10 to 13% enhanced survival of their cancer compared to the people that did not take it.
Yeah. So, I'm actually reading right here. There's a study in 2008, breast cancer as well. So we'll go through the three cancers that turkey tail has the highest impact on, and I'll talk about those, but they are breast cancer, leukemia, and colorectal cancer. And it has a very, there's tons of studies with colorectal cancer, and that's why I drive to it right away. But breast cancer, there's a study in 2008 and there's a study in 2012, both studies on, we talk about thousands of people. This is not just a very select study. This is thousands of people they did a study on, and both had an increase of survivability. From one of them was 12, the other was 16%. which is, those are big numbers when you're looking at the vast numbers,
Sure.
right? So, and leukemia, like there's another study in 2012 and 2013, and one of them, a clinical study, they did 23 clinical studies with 4,200 patients, and they saw an increase of survivability of over 18%, which these are, once again, big numbers. And 4,200 people is a good amount of study. That's a good group of study. So this is not something where people are just pulling these numbers out. They're actually really done proper educated studies, and people are seeing the results with them. Colorectal cancer. Where do you see the benefit of it with colorectal cancer? And that's what I like. Obviously, that attracted me to it. And you're seeing a lot of individuals that I've talked to in the colorectal cancer world. This is a big supplement for everybody. I mean, everybody's taking it. I mean, most people they don't call it turkey tail. They call it, they have the other
Versicolor.
But it's something that's heavily used. Why is this so evident with the colorectal cancer world?
Well, a combination of supporting the immune system is one of the factors on this. Yeah. So it kind of ramps up the immune system. Antioxidant first. That means we're going to repair cells and more like a prevention type thing throughout the body. But let me back up a little bit. So we're drinking this, and so it's being absorbed. It's going to work systemically. That means in the whole body.
Yeah.
And some of the particles are not going to be absorbed. It's going to pass through the gut all the way until we have a bowel movement. So now we're actually exposing the whole tube, digestive gut system to these nutrients. So, and then those chemicals, are also coming in through the blood supply.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of different ways that works. And then it also seems to be even helping out with the good bacteria in the gut. And so
let's talk about that.
So there are a few in 3, and I have it written down, and I'm writing actually a blog post about this, but there's like 3 bacteria that are known to actually be toxic and increase the risk of colorectal and colon cancer. And so those 3 bacteria, matter of fact, there's some studies showing that even exposure as a child, or having a lot of this bacteria as a child, can increase adult colorectal cancer, because it's kind of like a forever thing going on.
Is there anything that links to causing this bacteria? Any type of things that we're doing environmentally or food that causes bacteria to grow?
Anti-antibiotics. Taking antibiotics kill out the good stuff, and these have a tendency to survive a little bit better. The environment and not getting enough good bacteria, from foods, like fermented foods, for example. And so that's part of this recent rise in younger colorectal colon cancer rates, is seed oils, that are wrong, but it's fiber, and exercise, everything we talk about, increase that risk. Well, the mushroom type things, how many people eat mushrooms in North America? It's just not a common thing.
Very low. I would say that the whole social media world has put another light on mushrooms, and a lot of these new companies are coming in with trends where like mushroom coffee and all this stuff. So there is a trend, but it's still very, very small percent wise that people are taking on a regular basis or even doing it as a supplement, right?
Right. Yeah. And but it helps a good bacteria to grow and kind of ramps up the immune system. In these other cultures, they take the time and they know about these mushrooms, in North America. As a matter of fact, so we were up in the mountains, like I was talking about a moment ago, and one guy, he's actually lived up there most of his life in the Santa Fe, and up into the mountains. And he's got a cabin up there in the mountains too. And so he was talking about his grandfather, were kind of like medicine men, and they knew about the mushrooms. They knew what plants were good. One of them had a major cut from a chainsaw accident. He went to the hospital, antibiotics, and nothing was really working. The wound was worse. So he sent his son, this guy that lives up there now, and back to their ranch, in or outside Santa Fe, and told him exactly where to go. Take this plant, make a paste out of it. And he went to the hospital, slapped that paste on. 2 days later, he was leaving the hospital because it took care of the infection.
which is
So,
incredible.
we've lost that. And matter of fact, I said, Juan, you need to write this stuff down. He says, I don't know enough. He says, I don't feel qualified, but he really knows more than most of us about these plants. And so I asked him about the mushrooms. And matter of fact, I could see up in the mountains some of these versicolor that were dead. They were dried out. So it's not moist enough in that particular area. It's an arid area. It's a moisture. It has to be high humidity and, type area. So there's not many there. It has to be a hardwood forest, and pine is not really a hardwood. So it's not, and fir, not really a hardwood. So that area is not great for that. But, I did see a couple of those mushrooms as I was walking around that were on the decaying wood out there. So anyway, back to gut health. It just helps the good bacteria to grow, kills out some of those bad bacterias, ramps up the immune system to attack that, but it helps supplement the good bacteria to.
Would you classify it as Would you classify it as a prebiotic or a probiotic? Like, what are the benefit of it? How would it work?
It'd be more like a pre.
So you categorize it more with the greens and stuff like that as a prebiotic.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay.
Like a prebiotic.
Which is very important, which is very, very important. I want to dive back into something. There's two parts. One of the studies and why I gravitated towards turkey tail was, even back then I read the study. It helps stop cancer cells from spreading. And when I found out I had a stage 3 tumor in my colorectum, and I was waiting for surgery and I was prepping my body for the surgery, my mindset was, I need to make sure this doesn't spread in the next 2.5 months. So that was a huge part why I dove into this right away. How does it all works with your immunity? Like, how does it stop the cells from spreading?
So, it's not really just the immune system, but that's a significant part.
Yeah.
So it actually ramps up the immune system. There's what are called beta glucans in it.
Yeah.
And the beta glucans actually attach to macrophages. And those macrophages then, when they recognize something and they start attacking like a cancer cell, they actually send out more chemicals to other types of the immune system, and they literally start attacking the cancer cell and eating away at the tumor.
Which is amazing.
So, which is really exactly very amazing. And so that's one action. And then even there's some other things they don't, a couple of studies that I was looking at, it even has some properties of literally they can just add it to a extract or like turkey tail extract, add it to tumors that are in the petri dish in a laboratory setting, and the tumors start shrinking. So, and they don't fully understand all of that. They're trying to study it. The challenge is there's not much money in it, and so therefore, most of the research is done on kind of like extracts, and in Asia, where there's literally not just hundreds of years, but over 2,000 years of records of them using it for cancer and cardiovascular disease, many different things, in the body. So once again, it's kind of the antioxidant thing, helping the mitochondria to be normal and along that line. So we're learning that some cancer cells can also be treated with these kind of antioxidants and a lot of basic nutrients, and they can actually flip and go back to normal.
Okay. Which is amazing too.
Which is amazing. So it's like it helps things to be more normal. Okay. Or in the medical area, they call that differentiated. So poorly differentiated is a tumor and it's not operating right. That, and differentiated, it means it's more normal. And so truly like a regular organ maybe. So, some of it I don't fully understand, but those are kind of the antioxidant, immune system, and then just kind of helps to shrink those tumors up. So they got those many studies about that, and they have all these different ingredients of polysaccharides and beta glucans. They just add those, even the extracts, just the isolated ingredients in a test tube, and helps us shrink up those tumors.
I want to dive back into something you said, and it kind of like popped a light in my head.
Okay.
I would say for some odd reason, from my early 20s to, I would say, my mid 30s, I would get 2 to 3 sinus infections a year. And the first thing a doctor would give me was to be a 7 to 12 day dose of antibiotics.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And now that as you said that, I'm just thinking of my history, and I'm thinking of how much damage it did to my gut over those years. And could that have been one of the aspects that caused what happened to me? So I want individuals listening to this, because you go to any MD with any type of sinus infection, throat infection, anything, and their first thing they're going to throw at you is an antibiotic, especially with children. Because I remember my daughter had always tonsils issues growing up, and she would be on antibiotics 2-3 times a year, 4 times a year. I didn't have the education back then. I wasn't aware back then. If it was now, there's no way I would be putting that in her. But you didn't know that. So I want people that are listening to this podcast to be aware that try to use more natural ways to cure a disease, not even disease, cure a cold, get your body stronger than diving right into an antibiotic, because there is so much damage it does to your gut health. And the recover from that is not that easy, and it takes a while. And people don't understand the long-term effects that we are seeing now with increases of disease, increases of other things. So that is one thing I think our listeners could benefit from, is if your little one or yourself, you have an infection, you go to your doctor and they're trying to push an antibiotic on you, try to find alternatives to bring up your immune system to fight that naturally, whether it's increase your vitamin C or vitamin D or other stuff, whether it's your turmerics or other stuff to help build your immune system to be able to handle that and fight that, because our bodies naturally should be able to fight these. Am I right with that?
Yes, exactly. So, as a child, I do remember some very early things. I remember, getting a polio vaccination that was in a sugar cube.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you did that or not, but, but when I was young, I remember a few different doctor type things, but, I didn't take any antibiotics until I was in high school for acne.
Yeah.
At all. And even that was wrong. I mean,
I was just saying, think about that.
That was wrong. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I took antibiotics for years.
Yeah.
And it kind of helped. And then that's actually why I even got into pharmacy, because actually the doctor and then the pharmacist I was going to didn't tell me how to take it right. And I was taking it wrong. Yeah. Anyway, so it wasn't working right. My uncle, who is a pharmacist still, he's 10 years older than me. He's still practicing. And so he's the one that told me how to take it. And it's like, that's so neat, anyway. So that was his practice, one-on-one, talking to every single person. And so that's how I got started many years ago. But antibiotics, do create some major issues, and there's even some studies showing that, taking a probiotic, helps to balance those bacteria, and may also decrease the risk of colorectal and colon cancer.
Yeah.
So, if there's any type of a concern, I'm recommending definitely a probiotic, and evaluating total, gut health. And so, about stomach acid and things like that we talked about before. So it's very important. And matter of fact, I wonder about plastics. What impact would this have on helping the body with plastics that we're exposed to? That's something else I'll have to explore. I don't know. I don't think
I think that's not. I actually did read a couple studies on that as I was researching this. So it's something we could actually talk about in another podcast. Mm-hmm. 2 more things I want to get into, and this is where your expertise will come in along, is for any listener that is not currently taking turkey tail, and they listen to this podcast and they think it'll benefit them, which I think it will benefit most people. Dose and time of the day, you'll get the best benefit out of it, and the quantity. Let's talk about that. What would you recommend for the average person?
So, it's something that's not kind of like long acting.
Okay.
And so, the dose, it's not well studied. As far as the dose goes. And so I do like the tea aspect of it, and brewing the tea and, to get most of those polyphenols out. You could do capsules. That could be an option. There's capsules.
I
available.
take capsules.
Yeah. So capsules are great. Teas are wonderful. And even a powder, like taking that whole turkey tail and grinding it up and consuming it all, kind of like a matcha.
Yeah.
You probably even get better benefits from taking a capsule or a powder. Teas are great, but that bag acts as a filter.
Yeah.
And so you may not get some of those ingredients, in that. Loose leaf turkey tail might be, if you want, not really leaf, but if you can filter that some way, because you're going to get some of those powders. But those powders are also great nutrients.
Yeah.
And so, it'd have to be something that at least twice a day.
Okay.
Doing that to get enough of it. It is not a stimulant, and so you could even do it as part of a combination for nighttime. And actually going through the process of actually doing some brewing or making a tea or a powder, mixing with things. It's also a little bit of a meditation and process, and that's in Asian cultures. That's actually very important.
Yeah.
It's not like work all the time. I'm very guilty of that. Yeah. Extremely guilty of that. My wife even got on to me the other night about that. And so, but taking that time and going through that process of making those teas is important. But, typically at least twice a day, because it's not stored in the body. It's kind of like foods.
Yeah.
And so, eating once a day, probably not quite an ideal situation. We need to be eating a couple of times a day, on that. And then I'll admit, I'm not real sure if there is a better time. Have you come across any information about that?
I mean, as you're talking about it as a prebiotic, I just take it as a prebiotic. I didn't even think of it as a prebiotic, because in my mind, prebiotic was always greens. And I take a probiotic as a supplement, but I take a prebiotic in conjunction with that. So, I break my fast with my stack of supplements, and I always drink. I mean, every single day I have a bowl of organic blueberries, and I have a organic green pepper raw, and that's how I start my day. And that's the first thing I put in my body every single day after my supplements. And when I look at that, I actually take my turkey tail with my green as my pre-supplements, and I actually take a turkey tail before I go to bed with my probiotic. So I actually do take it as a prebiotic without even thinking about it. So I think if you're going to look at time-wise, I would do it in the morning with your probiotic, if you do take a probiotic, or as a prebiotic, and I would take it in the evening time, like you said, before you go to bed. For a colorectal cancer, it's just in your body. It's just absorbing your body, so you have that time of the night on a more empty stomach to allow your body to absorb it the most.
Yes, and I think the empty stomach is important, aspect of this. So some of these polysaccharides and beta glucans, there's it is suggested in research that if you take those with a meal, the digestive enzymes and stomach acid will actually start breaking them down more.
Yeah.
And it may even dissolve some of the active ingredients.
Yeah.
Okay, break them down into particles that may not be active. So really, although I haven't really seen specific studies saying that it works better in that case, but in the isolated ingredients like beta glucans, there are research studies showing that they work a little bit better on an empty stomach. And so, matter of fact, along this line too, there's actually in the Asian countries, there's actually several studies on humans, and they would actually give these things to their soldiers, in basic training, and they would actually consume these things. Have one group in this barrack group of soldiers take this product, and this group did not in the other barrack, and they're doing the same program, the same foods. Well, the soldiers that actually took this had less colds and flus than the other ones. And so they're in a very stressful, emotional thought and physical stress, increased risk of colds and flu. And then in those barrack situations every night, close quarters, and actually cold and flu is a very common problem because their immune system is weakened.
Yeah.
But it ramps up the immune system, less colds, virus infections. So therefore, several cancers are actually related to infections. So whether it be bacteria like for colorectal type things, and viruses, are definitely risk factors for several cancers. So this helps ramp up the immune system to fight those viruses. And we will use them for everything from a herpes type infection to cold sores and shingles, for example, and Epstein-Barr, which is mononucleosis, and which is related to thyroid cancer. So, or one type of thyroid cancer out of two major ones. So it ramps up the immune system. So empty stomach is important, to increase the absorption of those. So because the isolated ingredients, they found that those do work better either as an injection or empty stomach. And there are injection forms of the isolated ingredients, in Asia that are prescription medications for cancer.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, end of the day, great supplement, turkey tail, whether it's preventative, whether you're on your cancer fighting journey, there's so much study, so much benefit to it. As Keith was saying, empty stomach, use it as a prebiotic almost, either before you go to bed. If you could take it twice a day before you go to bed or early morning, and you could have it as a tea form. I do it as a supplement form. It's a powder in a capsule. I've actually even sometimes opened up a capsule and into a glass of water and just drank it. There's different ways you could do about it just to absorb it better, but it's a great supplement that I think everybody should be on, and it works with another supplement we've actually had a podcast on, which is chaga, and they work hand in hand. They're both, like I said, they're derived from mushrooms, and there's so much benefits to them. So once again, Keith, tons of knowledge. I think it's almost, sometimes I'm listening to you and I'm like, I hope our listeners are getting this all, because there's so much knowledge happening. No, it's amazing. It's amazing, right? Yeah. So sometimes you almost have to go back and listen to the podcast twice because there's so much things to write notes on. And I talk about you all the time. Your knowledge level is incredible. And it's so amazing to hear you talk, because you have passion with what you're talking about. You have a smile and you're excited about what you're talking about. It's almost like you're nerding out on these supplements and stuff, which is amazing. Which is amazing. It's amazing.
My favorite thing is to read medical journals. That's kind of weird. But,
no, it's not. It's not, because
I love reading those medical journals.
Your passion is saving millions of lives, right? So I think that's you're a gift for a lot of people. So keep doing what you're doing, and I appreciate you. And until next week, thanks, buddy. And anything else you want to leave off here?
No, that's it. Except for just think about color foods and teas, and you just think of ways to get these nutrients, these dark colored type items into our diet. Yeah. And teas are a great option too.
Yeah. And remember, everyone, it's not just turkey tails and a cure cancer. It's a whole holistic combination, from exercise to de-stressing yourself to environment to everything. It's a little of everything. And every little thing you could plug in is one more opportunity to beat this disease or prevent this disease. So keep doing what you're doing.
Another few percents. Every little thing we do.
Everything matters.
Percents.
Everything matters.
It really does. Yeah.
Until next week, buddy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.